viewers, welcome again to our show, Diaspora Life Show. It's my pleasure to host these guys again. These are professionals living in America that bring on our show a lot of experience in terms of what's happening around the world. Again, now today we go back to Kenya and we're going to talk about the Building Bridges initiative. There's so much going on. I'm told that as we speak right now, reggae has stopped, and we want to understand what's going on. So I'll ask David Ogega from Atlanta City to give us the status update on what's going on. I'm told that Dr. The DP is somewhere in Dubai enjoying I think some good weather or something. But David will give us more. Daudi, karibu bwana, and please just update our viewers on where we are. The last I heard was the BBI was supposed to be launched officially. What happened?
Gosh. First of all, Chris, again, thank you so much for the opportunity, and appreciate being part of the platform today. Great programming. But you know, just going down to it, I think BBI as it stands now, it's all obviously on hold. I think the president or the principals realized that maybe the timing was off, the optics were off, especially in the middle of the COVID pandemic. I think we now have a very high spike of COVID. And so I don't think it looked good to really go on advancing the BBI in that prism, not knowing or pretending like people are not dying left and right because of COVID or contracting it. As we all know, there's two things that have actually contributed to COVID more than anything else. We've had the BBI and also the 2022 politics that really would make up super spreaders, if you will. But I think because of the protestations from people like myself and others in our country, they said, no, maybe we should hold off on it. And that's really what happened. It was a last minute call by the president himself. What we saw is that, you know, he just maybe he came to his senses that this just don't look right. That being said, we're at a point now we have an opportunity to really look at what that BBI really is, because I just don't think, or most Kenyans don't think, that it really speaks to the aspirations and that it's actually been misrepresented. It's been spurious, if you can. In other words, what's put out there is not really what it's supposed to be. So it's an opportunity to really look at it.
Thanks. Thank you, David. Professor Choti, like David said, you know, the optics were so bad. At some point, you know, people are accusing the right engineer, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, that he was what we call tone deaf when it comes to the issues around COVID-19 and BBI. How did you see that in terms of just the you know, the spread, the rampant spread of COVID-19 and gatherings like BBI?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity. And I'm happy to be part of these discussions, especially when they touch on a very important issue of national importance in our country, the BBI. I think when you look at it, it's like the BBI idea has not exactly caught the imaginations of the people. When I look at it, in terms of priority, in terms of addressing the core issues facing the country, and there's lack of momentum when I look at it. And I see like the president is becoming more aware of that. especially the COVID-19 ravages are scary to the population. And the people think generally, even myself, even I think most of you, that at the moment, you cannot ignore the impact of COVID-19 and the way our people are dying. Recently, you saw a member of parliament. I'm not sure what was the cause of the death, but most people speculated it was COVID-19. And he couldn't access the basics, lack of oxygen, medical attention, wherever he was. If a person of that caliber cannot access the basics of medical attention, then what is happening with the rest of the population? I think the masses are more concerned with immediate issues that touch their daily lives, especially the medical situation is not good in the country. Poverty is on the increase, unemployment is there. And I think Kenyans feel that BBI is there, but it's not, in terms of priority, it may not be, they don't see it as something that can immediately, as a solution of what is happening in the country. The country is facing so many challenges right now. And I think the proponents of the PPI have not succeeded in capturing the imagination of the population, and in that way be able to move forward. But I'm seeing some challenges there, especially with the president and the Raila Odinga.
Thanks, Professor Ichoti. In fact, that's very true. Professor Monda from New York City. You know, people were drawing parallels between Kenya and the US in the sense that, you know, politics seems to be taking the front seat in, instead of the government dealing with issues of COVID-19 and also poverty that really is a consequence of COVID-19. What's your views?
Yeah, so I think in the context of comparing US and Kenya, there are certain parallels. So as we were speaking from last week, we are having this crisis of confidence of the public in political systems, where sections of the population, say here in the United States, particularly core Trump supporters, they are being incentivized to doubt the integrity of electoral systems. And I think this is particularly unprecedented with Trump. He's really behaving like a lot of leaders in developing countries, and in Kenya in particular, where they do not accept defeat in elections, even when they know they've clearly lost. So I think that's one parallel. I think a difference in terms of comparing the two contexts would be also that because we are very entrenched and strong institutions here, even though Trump is trying to nullify the election, he's trying every way to raise doubts about his loss. But the general public, the average voter who is middle of the road, really understands that Joe Biden has won this election. I think if we had a similar situation in Kenya right now, there would be absolute chaos because our institutions have not been entrenched, and the organs of providing for public safety, in particular our security services, the police, are hoodwinked or controlled by state operatives to punish and reward, to punish opponents and to reward supporters. So if we had the current context that we have in the US with a candidate denying results of an election, in Kenya we would have ethnic violence, tribal clashes, and we would have the sponsoring of vigilante groups, Jeshi la Mzee, Chinkororo warriors, all of these different vigilante groups to go and harass opponents and ethnicize this violence. So it's really important, I think, the lessons we learn when we compare the two, how important it is to have strong institutions so that when you have these difficult political situations, people can move on with their lives. I voted November 3rd. The next day I was in class teaching and life moves on. You allow the Electoral Commission to do its job. If one candidate is not satisfied, they go through the process. You can see Trump has done a recount in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, he's lost. They've rejected his case. And also in Georgia, he's lost. So the system is open. It's fair. I think that's something that in Kenya we can see. But I think we can also see in both contexts this issue when a candidate refuses to concede and to follow the norms of the tradition of concession and accepting the role of opposition, then we have problems in the country.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Professor. Professor Shadrach from Madison, Wisconsin. And this is something that Professor Ichoti really touched on, in the sense that in as much as people talk so much about BBI, it doesn't seem to have captured the imagination of the nation. And maybe it's because it's coming on the heels of a devastating pandemic. But you know, as a professor of history, do you think, what do you think can happen to make BBI now a priority? In any case, do you really think it's a priority as it is?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I actually teach comparative politics, not history. But this animal called BBI, in my considered view, it is of little consequence to the interests, not just of the country, but of the citizens as well. If you look at the purpose for which BBI was set up, the objectives articulated in the report are that it is supposed to strengthen the rule of law, unite Kenyans, deepen constitutionalism, and launch a comprehensive reform process to consolidate peace, security, and unity. You do not need a constitutional reform to do this. One of the basic things that is being used to actually sell the BBI is the idea that county governments will begin to get 35% of the national budget. But that can be done administratively. That can be done policy-wise. You do not need a change of the constitution to implement this. So the entire report and its proposals can be achieved within the context of the current constitution. You don't need to change the constitution. The only change that actually requires a constitutional change is the expansion of the executive, which in my view is the main objective on the part of the principals, Raila Odinga and the President Kenyatta. Their intention is to expand the executive for purposes of taking care of elite interests. These other things they are mentioning in that report are simply meant to escort the principal purpose, which is expanding the executive. And expanding the executive will not generate peace. It will not create stability. It will not create anything. And so the elite are simply taking care of their own interests. So if you ask me, BBI is no priority. The principal cause of violence in the country is not ethnicity. It is the rigging of elections. In fact, there is no ethnic violence in the country. All the violence is political. And so to address the question of violence, tension, is to run free and fair elections. That is what we need. We don't need any constitutional reforms.
Awesome. Ojwang is ready to go, but let's go to Osiro.
I'm just agreeing with Professor. You speak for a lot of us. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we come back to you, Ojwang, you know, this is you're playing on your home ground. Let's bring in Osiro. Osiro, what's as a writer, you know, you have to be a historian to write, but you always write from stuff that existed or is existing. A little bit of imagination added in there. But just pick up from where Professor Nasongo left. It seems like we are going back to the same thing, and that is questioning the rationale behind really BBI in a country that is currently almost more than half of the population lives on $1 or less.
Chris, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to hang out with this great group. You know, the bottom line is, and I think we are going to be sounding like a broken record. BBI is basically a self-preservation tool for the dynasties. It is really that simple. I think Professor Nasongo was hit the nail on the head when he talked about all this other stuff, you know, whether it's help loans, whether it's, you know, whatever carry-ons that were added as sweeteners. All those are smoke screens to lull the public into believing that this initiative is actually in their best interest, while the bottom line is that it's expanding the executive to basically allow, whether it's Raila or Mudavadi or whoever, whether it's basically expanding the executive to perpetuate the dynasties. And I think everything else is really background noise. So everything that has been proposed by the initiative can be done within the framework of the existing constitution. If you go back to things like the Truth, Justice, and Reconciliation Commission report, they touched on some of the very elements BBI is proposing to address, whether it's, you know, negative ethnicity, whether it's historical injustices, whether it's the land, land issue. All those things were touched on by the TJRC Commission report after that was, triggered by the post-election violence of 2007 and 8. So this BBI is basically along those lines of the various reports or the various commission reports that have been put out by the leaders, specifically the president and those around him, to perpetuate their hold on power. And until, the way I look at it, until a critical mass of Kenyans start seeing that they are not, Kenyans are really not the problem. I think the problem are the leaders that we have. And until as a critical mass of Kenyans, just like a critical mass of Americans, so that, you know, we cannot have this person leading us, until a critical mass of Kenyans start saying we cannot have somebody like Ruto, somebody like Uhuru, someone like Raila leading us because they're all interested in it for their own selfish interest. Until a critical mass of us see that across ethnic lines, we are going to be having this discussion repeatedly. So this is not the first time we've come up with a blue panel report. It is, at this rate, it won't be the last time.
Thanks, Osiro. David, now you can come in. But I would like you to talk really about COVID-19, because in essence, the rate at which we're seeing the spread of COVID-19 in Kenya is scary. In as much as we talk about BBI, we've all agreed that that's not a priority. And the good thing is even the leadership have also realized that. But COVID-19 is killing our people, man.
Yep.
Go ahead, David.
Yes, I was going to add to that, Chris. I mean, I think we all agree it's common sense what's happening. You know, it's only that common sense is not all that common, as we all know. And I think our leadership or leaders in our country, they just missed the boat in that because they're so blinded by their own ambitions. And until something happens directly to them or somebody related to them so that they can, you know, empathize with what this COVID-19 means or the ravages that is being that is accruing to our people. I mean, they just don't seem to get it. You know, I listen to some of these things, and I hate to sound this way, but you know, when you hear about some people that are referred to as overconfident idiots. In other words, they just, it's like they're so confident of themselves and they don't try to even put themselves in the shoes of the rest of us. And that's the situation we're running into now, that they've prioritized the wrong thing. But COVID, we even got money from from donor countries. We got money from multilateral organizations, and they said, hey, here, we know what's coming and how bad this thing is going to be. Here, try to help your people so that we don't go through the ravages that you're going through. And they just took the money and ran with it. The president said, when the heat became so hot and people were complaining, he said, oh, he's going to take action, and 21 days later, there should be prosecutions. Of course, that was 60 days ago, as we all know. Nothing has happened. So it speaks for itself. I don't think we need to belabor the obvious of what is really wrong with our country. But if I may, I just want to talk just 1 second about the BBI, because it falls within that context. There is what I consider to be a cognitive dissonance. In other words, the message that is coming out, it's not, there's no cohesion, there's nothing in it. They're telling us one thing that the BBI is supposed to do, for example. It's such a priority that we have to look at it right now, and we need to collect signatures. But like Dr. Nasongo said, a lot of what's on that BBI, it does not jive with what they're telling us it's going to fix. It does not fix our problem. So that takes us back to BBI. The COVID. If you want to prioritize COVID, because these are the people we need to vote for BBI, and if I were the president and Raila Odinga at this point, it would really be in my best interest to really take this opportunity, fix it. I look at it as, like when oil comes out of a refinery, for example, it's crude. And then it has to go through the refinery, and it's processed. And by the time it comes out, goes to the tank, it's been, it's been refined properly. What we have in BBI is as crude as it comes. So now let's go back to prioritize, COVID. Let's fix COVID. Let's take care of our people. Let's minimize the spread. Let's not use this as BBI or 2022 politics as super spreader platforms. And then while we do that, let's refine the BBI itself.
Thanks, David. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, can I make a quick comment? I think at risk of being bludgeoned for supporting the elites, in their defense, I think our leaders are a reflection of our society. I think this is another element of it. Yep. We also, as much as we pointed our leaders, one finger's pointing at our leaders, 4 fingers are pointing back at us. We are a reflection of those very leaders. Look at an example of the Luo Nyanza ethnic voting bloc, and how one individual and one family has so emasculated political support around ethnic mobilization.
Except me.
Basira, you included.
But
if you dare say anything against Jacom in that region that's so balkanized politically around this individual, you are risking political suicide. I'll give you a very poignant example of Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, one of the most brilliant scholars here, one of my mentors, people we look at in our field of political science, has written incredible books about African politics and ethnic mobilization, and pointed to these very things. Yet he is now governor of Kisumu, supporting the very BBI and the ills which for many years he criticized.
Yep.
You look at alternate voices from Luo Nyanza, like James Orengo. Where are they? And they parrot these things that they know legally are wrong, politically are wrong, and the masses support them. And they do this because Orengo tried to go against Odinga in 2002, and he lost. His political future was doomed. Right? And Anyang' Nyong'o probably is fearing the same thing. So we really need also to be cognizant of the reality that a lot of what the leaders are doing is also reflective of us as individuals and our own ethnic thinking. I'd also add, even aside from the political class, Chris, if you looked at some of our electoral bodies, that the NCIC, the civil society organizations, a lot of them are supposed to be independent, but if you look at the politics, say even within the LSK, the NCIC, it's still very heavily ethnicized. So this is very interesting that even within the political class, as much as we criticize them, but we also have to look at our population. The electorate is heavily ethnicized, ethnically divided, and also the civil society is as hopelessly divided along ethnic lines. So this is also part of the broader problem of our crisis right now. We rarely deal with issues. We have problem with COVID. We're always talking about 2022. We are currently facing a second wave of COVID, another wave of locusts. We are $7 billion in debt, and our young people can't get jobs. And every 5 years, all we do is talk about the next election. This is a big problem from the electorate.
In addition, Chris,
allow me to come back.
Allow me to say something. Let me comment before, please. I want to say something before Nansongo because I wanted to refer to what he said earlier.
Okay.
And then probably you can come later. What I'm saying is that Kenya's problem is not a bad constitution. Our 2010 constitution is still ranked among the best, it's the most progressive constitution in the world. But did we implement that constitution? Why? Because I think it has not fully. It's not even 70% implemented. And the implementation of a constitution is political will.
Thanks, Professor. Shadrach.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The issue that Dr. Jyoti's raised, wanted to raise as well in reaction to what Dr. Monda was talking about. So let us squarely look at this question of COVID-19 and how it has been addressed. The problem has been squarely a problem of leadership. And one of the major problems is the problem of corruption, right? And so one of the recommendations in the BBI report is to intensify the fight against corruption. Do you need a constitutional reform to intensify that? You don't. Now look at how the resources mobilized to fight against COVID, resources coming from outside. The Jack Ma Foundation sent in consignments of BPEs and other, those equipment were repackaged and sold to Tanzania. The money that came in from the World Bank, from the IMF, from the European Union, from Norway and other countries, that money was never used for purposes of fighting COVID. We have read about the scandal at the Kenya Medical Supplies Agency. Companies were formed after COVID struck and the money was now being mobilized to fight COVID-19. New companies were formed that have direct linkages to the political elite. I have a list of so many companies that then were given contracts to supply to the KEMSA and paid millions,
Billions.
shillings, billions in fact, supplying nothing in no bid contracts. And so the money, the resources that were mobilized for purposes of fighting COVID has ended up enriching a few people.
All the reason why that's happening is because Kenyans allowed that shit to happen. Sorry. If a critical mass of us, a critical mass of Luos, say, you know what, we are done with this Raila dynasty, and we want to throw our weight behind Mudavadi. We want to throw our weight behind Kivuta Kibwana. If a critical mass of Luos say that, then we are going to see a very different body politics moving forward. But until they do that, until Luya say that no Mudavadi, until Kikuyu say that no Kenyatta, we are going to have this balkanized system, which is ripe for being divided and conquered.
Thank you, guys. Guys, let me run because I'm out of time.